In 1989, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for the Nintendo Entertainment System burst onto the scene, giving fans of the cartoon and comic book series their first taste of turtle power on a home console. Developed by Konami under their Ultra Games label, the game captured the essence of the four heroic turtles and their world, but also became infamous for its high difficulty and sometimes frustrating gameplay. Despite its challenges, the game remains a beloved, nostalgic title for many NES players. The late 1980s saw the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles franchise explode in popularity, driven by the success of the animated TV series and the action figure line by Playmates Toys. This cultural phenomenon prompted video game companies to jump on the bandwagon. Konami, a respected name in the gaming industry known for titles like Castlevania and Contra, was tasked with developing a TMNT game for the NES. However, due to Nintendo's strict licensing rules at the time, Konami created a subsidiary called Ultra Games to bypass the restriction that prevented third-party developers from releasing more than 5 games per year on the NES. Thus, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was published under the Ultra Games label, while the TMNT arcade game, also developed by Konami, was known for its cooperative multiplayer and beat-em-up action. The NES version took a different approach. Instead of focusing solely on combat, Konami opted for a more diverse action-adventure style with platforming and exploration elements. The NES game was developed quickly to capitalize on the Turtles' popularity, and while it wasn't a direct adaptation of the arcade game, it provided a unique experience tailored for home consoles. Despite being a massive commercial success, selling millions of copies worldwide, the game gained a reputation for being notoriously difficult. Yet, the game's combination of platforming, action, and open exploration attracted players and remains memorable, for better or worse, to this day. The plot of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on NES is straightforward, but fits the style of the TV show and comic books. The nefarious villain Shredder, leader of the Foot Clan, has captured the Turtles' friend and ally, April O'Neil. To make matters worse, Shredder has obtained a device called the Life Transformer Gun, which can reverse the mutation of the turtles, turning them back into ordinary pet turtles. With April in danger and the threat of their own mutation being undone, the four turtles, Leonardo, Michelangelo, Donatello, and Raphael, must set out to rescue their friend and stop Shredder's evil plan. The game doesn't have a deep narrative, but instead focuses on the action, with the story being told in snippets between stages. As the Turtles progress through the game, they encounter familiar foes like Bebop, Rocksteady, and the Technodrome, which serve as bosses and challenges for the player. The game is often described as a hybrid between an action platformer and a side-scrolling adventure game. The gameplay is divided into 2 main sections, an overhead map view and side-scrolling action levels, giving it a unique feel compared to other action games of the time. One of the game's most distinctive features is the ability to switch between all 4 turtles at any time during gameplay. Each turtle has unique abilities and weapons. Leonardo wields dual katana swords, offering balanced range and power. Michelangelo uses nunchaku, which provide moderate attack range but slightly less power. Donatello has a bow staff, which gives him the longest reach and most powerful attacks, making him ideal for boss battles. Raphael uses SI, which have the shortest range, making him less effective in combat, but he's faster in certain situations. Players must strategically switch between turtles depending on the situation. The game adds a layer of difficulty by limiting each turtle's health, so if one turtle takes too much damage and loses all their health, they are captured and unavailable for the remainder of the game. Though there are ways to rescue them later, this mechanic requires players to manage their turtles carefully and adds tension to every encounter. The game features 6 main stages, with each stage consisting of 2 types of gameplay. The overworld map is a top-down view where players navigate the city, searching for buildings, sewers, and other areas to enter. It's in these areas that the side-scrolling action takes place. The side-scrolling sections are where most of the combat and platforming happen. In these areas, players fight foot soldiers, mutants, and other enemies while navigating obstacles, traps, and tricky platforming segments. The layout of the levels can be confusing, and finding the right path often requires trial and error. In addition to the turtles' unique weapons, the game provides various items and secondary weapons that players can collect and use. These include throwing stars, shuriken, boomerangs, and scrolls that deal heavy damage. Managing these items is crucial for surviving tougher stages, especially during boss fights. At the end of several stages, players face off against bosses from the TMNT universe, including Bebop, Rocksteady, and the feared Technodrome. The boss fights are challenging and require careful timing, especially with Donatello's long reach making him the go-to turtle for these battles. Perhaps the most notorious part of the game is the underwater dam level in Stage 2, where the turtles must swim through an electrified water system to deactivate bombs planted by Shredder. The level is infamous for its punishing difficulty, as players must carefully navigate tight spaces while avoiding electric shocks, seaweed, and other hazards. Many players consider this one of the hardest levels in NES history, and it has become a symbol of the game's overall difficulty. Unlike many platformers of the time, TMNT on NES offers non-linear exploration, with players able to travel freely between certain areas using the overhead map. Some sections are optional, while others hide crucial items or secrets, making exploration a key part of the game's design. Despite its difficulty and mixed reviews from critics, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was a huge commercial success. The game sold over 4 million copies, making it one of the best-selling NES games of all time. Its success was fueled in large part by the massive popularity of the Turtles in the late 80s and early 90s. The game's music was composed by Jun Funahashi, who created some memorable, catchy tunes that NES players can still hum to this day. The main theme and several stage tracks have become iconic in their own right, helping to elevate the experience despite the game's flaws. TMNT for the NES is widely regarded as one of the most difficult games of its era. The game's challenging platforming sections, relentless enemies, and punishing underwater level made it frustrating for many players. Yet, for some, its difficulty became part of the allure, adding to its legacy as a tough but memorable game. As mentioned earlier, TMNT was released under Konami's Ultra Games label due to Nintendo's restrictions on the number of games a publisher could release in a year. This wasn't uncommon at the time. Ultra Games also published titles like Metal Gear and Skate or Die. While the NES version of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is the most well-known, the game was also released on other platforms, including the Commodore 64, Amiga, and ZX Spectrum. However, the NES version remains the definitive and most popular version of the game. The final level of the game, which takes place in the Technodrome, is one of the hardest stages in the entire NES library. The Technodrome is packed with enemies, including flying foot soldiers and laser turrets, and features a final battle against Shredder, who wields his powerful Life Transformer gun. The difficulty of this stage alone has led to countless players never seeing the game's conclusion. Due to the game's commercial success, Konami went on to release several other TMNT games, including Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game for NES, which was a more faithful port of the popular arcade beat-em-up, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, The Manhattan Project, another NES exclusive title. One of the quirks of the game is that players can exploit a glitch that allows them to regain access to defeated turtles during certain points in the game. This became a well-known trick among gamers looking for any advantage in this notoriously tough game. Despite the difficulty and occasional design flaws, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for NES is remembered fondly by fans of the franchise. It's often seen as a product of its time, a hard-as-nails platformer that didn't pull punches, but for those who mastered its quirks, it became a satisfying badge of honor. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for the NES is a game that holds a complicated but cherished place in the hearts of many retro gamers. While its difficulty, particularly the infamous underwater dam level, earned it a reputation as one of the most challenging NES titles, its charm, variety in gameplay, and connection to the beloved TMNT franchise make it a classic that's fondly remembered today. Whether you were a fan of the cartoon, the comics, or simply a gamer looking for a challenge in the 8-bit era, the game offered a unique and diverse experience that stands the test of time. Its legacy continues, inspiring new TMNT games and maintaining a spot in gaming history as one of the quintessential NES experiences. If you're brave enough to tackle the difficulty, this game is a must-play for any fan of retro games and Ninja Turtle enthusiasts alike.